Keanu Reeves was driving through a fierce storm, his mind lost in thought, when something caught his eye: a tiny puppy, trembling and alone in the pouring rain. What happened next would reveal the kind of man Keanu truly was, someone who could quietly change a stranger's life without seeking a single ounce of recognition. But the heart-wrenching story behind this puppy's loss would leave him with a powerful realization that would stay with him long after the storm had passed. Before we dive into this touching moment of kindness and healing, let us know where you're watching from. If you love real-life stories of hope and humanity, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, because tomorrow we've got another secretive, jaw-dropping story that you won't want to miss. The storm had been raging for hours. The kind of storm that makes you feel small against its power, as though nature itself was furious. Keanu Reeves was driving through a quiet neighborhood, the windshield wipers working overtime to keep up with the downpour. His mind was wandering, as it often did, to thoughts of his family, his upcoming film projects, and the quiet life he cherished. He wasn't in a hurry, and he wasn't thinking of anything too important. He was just driving, letting the world pass him by. As he turned a corner, something caught his eye. A small, frantic shape darting through the rain-soaked streets. It was a puppy, shivering, soaked to the bone, its fur matted and its tiny legs struggling against the storm. Keanu's heart dropped. Without a second thought, he slammed the brakes and pulled over, throwing the car into park. He grabbed his jacket and stepped out into the deluge, squinting through the sheets of rain. The puppy's eyes were wide with fear as it scampered away from him, its little paws slipping on the wet pavement. Keanu moved slowly, kneeling down to the puppy's level, his voice calm and steady. Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." It took a few minutes, but Keanu's soothing voice and slow movements finally convinced the puppy to come closer. The moment the puppy nuzzled his hand, Keanu scooped it up, cradling it against his chest to shield it from the rain. He could feel its tiny heart pounding beneath his fingertips, its body shaking from the cold and fear. Keanu looked around, but the streets were empty. No one else had come to help, and he couldn't bear the thought of leaving this helpless little creature alone. He slid back into the car with the puppy still in his arms and made a snap decision. He would take it to his house, get it warm, dry, and fed, and figure out the next step later. As the storm raged on outside, Keanu drove to his home, a quiet sanctuary far from the hustle and bustle of Hollywood. Once there, he rushed inside, wrapping the puppy in a soft blanket and starting a warm bath to clean it up. The puppy, now exhausted, rested peacefully in his arms, finally feeling safe. After the bath, Keanu sat down on the couch with the puppy, giving it gentle strokes to calm it further. It wasn't long before the puppy fell asleep, curled up in his lap. Keanu, lost in the moment, let out a sigh, his thoughts drifting. A few hours later, as the rain began to subside, Keanu decided to take a walk outside and clear his head. He stepped into the yard, the puppy now safely in his arms, when his phone buzzed. A text message. He unlocked the screen and read it. "I lost my puppy in the storm earlier today. I don't know what to do. Can you help me? Her name's Lily, and she's all I've got left. I'm heartbroken." Keanu felt a pang of emotion as he read the message. He could feel the pain in the words, and for a moment, the weight of the message hit him hard. He immediately dialed the number attached to the message. The voice that answered was shaky, anxious. "Hello? Hi, this is Keanu Reeves," he said softly. "I think I might have found your puppy. Is her name Lily?" There was a long pause, followed by a sob. "Lily. Oh my God, is she with you? Is she safe?" Keanu could hear the desperation in the voice. "She's safe. She's here with me. She's all right. I found her in the storm. She's dry and warm now, but if you'd like, I can bring her back to you." The woman on the other end of the phone let out a shaky breath. Thank you so much. I can't believe you found her. I've been searching everywhere for her." Keanu asked for her address and promised to bring Lily back immediately. As he ended the call, he glanced down at the puppy, who was now wagging her tail, recognizing that she would soon be reunited with her owner. He smiled, gently petting her as he grabbed his jacket. A short drive later, Keanu arrived at a modest home, a small cottage tucked away at the edge of town. He knocked on the door, and a woman in her late 30s opened it. Her face was a mixture of exhaustion and hope, her eyes red from crying. Keanu smiled softly as he knelt down and handed Lily back to her owner. The woman's face crumbled as she took the puppy in her arms, hugging her tightly. "Oh, Lily. Thank you so much," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Keanu stood back, watching the emotional reunion. He could see the love and relief in the woman's eyes, the bond between her and the dog unspoken yet undeniable. He didn't need to say anything, because he understood. After a moment, the woman looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I can't thank you enough. I don't know how to express what this means to me. Lily is all I have left. She was my son's dog before he passed away. She's been my comfort." Keanu's heart ached at her words. He had always understood loss, but hearing this woman's story, he realized how deep the pain could go. Losing a loved one, whether human or animal, was a wound that never fully healed. He could see that Lily had been more than a pet. She was a bridge to the past, a constant source of companionship. "No need to thank me," Keanu said gently. "I'm just glad she's back where she belongs." The woman nodded, her eyes shining with tears of gratitude. "You don't understand. You've just made a broken heart whole again." As Keanu walked back to his car, he felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. Sometimes the smallest acts, like finding a lost puppy in a storm, could make the biggest difference. He wasn't looking for recognition or accolades. He didn't need any of that. But knowing that in that moment he had brought someone a little bit of peace, that was enough. Keanu drove home, feeling the weight of the day's events settle around him, the storm finally clearing in more ways than one. There was a peace that followed, a sense that even in the chaos of life, there could still be moments of quiet kindness, moments that made the world feel just a little bit lighter. As Keanu sat quietly in his car, the rain finally letting up, he reflected on what had just happened. He'd always been a person who valued simplicity and honesty. Life, he thought, was filled with enough complications, enough noise. And yet, in these brief, fleeting moments of connection, when the world seemed to pause, things made sense. The pure joy of seeing that woman embrace her dog, the gratitude in her eyes, it was a reminder of how fragile, and how precious, the bonds we form with others can be. He parked the car in his driveway, the small, cozy house he'd built far from the bright lights of Hollywood. The kind of place where he could step away from everything and just be. He wasn't looking for glory. He wasn't searching for the next big headline. All he wanted was to live authentically, to give what he could when he could, and sometimes, that meant stopping for a puppy in a storm. As he sat there for a few more minutes, the night wrapping itself around him like a soft blanket, Keanu couldn't help but smile. Life was full of surprises. And sometimes those surprises were simple, like finding a lost puppy, or offering a little kindness when it was needed most. But what struck him the most was how, even in the darkest of times, there was always hope. That woman had been in pain, her heart broken by the loss of her son, and yet Lily had brought her a sense of peace. In a way, the puppy had healed her as much as she had cared for it. The bond between them had been stronger than just companionship. It had been about survival, about love that transcended everything else. Keanu thought about his own losses, the personal grief that he had carried with him through the years. The people he'd loved, the friends he'd lost. It wasn't something you could ever truly get over, but maybe, just maybe, it was something you could learn to live with. And as much as he had given to the woman and her dog, he felt as though he had taken something from that moment, too, a reminder that even in the worst storms, there was beauty to be found. He stepped out of the car, took a deep breath, and made his way inside. The silence of his home welcomed him, as it always did. He placed his keys on the kitchen counter, and for a moment, just stood there. The echoes of his thoughts were soft, but they lingered, like a quiet song playing in the background. Keanu was a man who didn't need to seek out attention. His life had been full of triumphs and challenges, and he had faced both with grace. But there was something different about tonight. Something unspoken. It wasn't about the puppy, or the storm, or even the woman's gratitude. It was about the small acts of kindness that could change the course of someone's life. The moments that defined us, without us even realizing it. He sank into his favorite chair, his tired eyes looking out at the stars that were beginning to peek through the clouds. The storm was gone. The night was calm. And for once, Keanu allowed himself to rest in the peace that surrounded him. Tomorrow would come with its own challenges, its own uncertainties. But tonight, just for a little while, he was content. As Keanu leaned back, his thoughts wandered to how often the world moved so fast, how little we took the time to slow down and appreciate the simple, beautiful moments. Life had a way of throwing curveballs, some harder than others, but there was always room for love, whether it was the love of a dog, a friend, or even a perfect stranger. It had a way of finding us when we least expected it, wrapping around us like a warm blanket in the coldest of storms. In his quiet solitude, he thought back to the woman and her puppy. How her heart, torn apart by grief, was healing in the unlikeliest of ways. And in helping them, Keanu realized that he, too, had received something in return, a glimpse into the resilience of the human spirit. He was reminded of the importance of connection, of being there for others when the world felt too heavy to bear alone. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew that small acts of kindness could go a long way in making the world a little brighter. The minutes ticked by in the quiet of his home, the stillness giving him space to breathe, to reflect. He thought of his own struggles, his losses, the people he had loved and lost, the times he'd felt uncertain or alone. But those were just chapters, not the whole story. Life had a way of writing its own narrative, with unexpected twists, joys, and moments of grace. Keanu stood up and walked over to the window. The storm had passed, and the sky was clearer now, the stars shining with a brightness that felt almost magical. There was a sense of serenity in the night, a peace that filled him as he gazed up at the vast, open sky. He didn't need to chase after fame or fortune. In those quiet, still moments, he had everything he needed. Tomorrow would come, as it always did, but for tonight, Keanu was content with the knowledge that he had made a difference, no matter how small, in the life of another. And perhaps that was all that really mattered, to touch lives in meaningful ways, to offer kindness when it was needed most, and to let that love ripple out into the world. With a deep breath, he closed the window, turned off the lights, and settled into the warmth of his home. The night embraced him, and as he drifted off to sleep, Keanu felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. No matter what the future held, tonight had been enough. If this story touched your heart, we've got many more that will do the same. Click the screen to discover more tales of hope, compassion, and resilience that will inspire you.